Hello there and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, back after my summer holiday. I'm joined today by Ian Doyle, who survived the Battle of St James's Park on Monday evening. How are we, Ian?
I'm okay. I just thought it was funny, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, it was amusing in many ways. But before we do that, some housekeeping, of course. We are remote today. Our producer Ian is away this week. It is the summer holiday season after all. Things should go back to normal in September. But yeah, we'll give a shout out to our sponsors, NordVPN. Thank you, Nord, for sponsoring this podcast. And to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodrag. And our link gives you 4 months extra on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. We're not live today, as you'll know, but if you'd like to send me a question to be answered in the pod, I'm happy to take them. joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. I've had several since I've been away. Sorry if you're one of the people that have been sending me questions or your thoughts on some of the events over the summer. Sorry I've not got back to you. I've got a couple written down that we can talk about, Ian. One from after Monday night, a couple from before then, but which I think are still relevant. So we'll get into them as the podcast goes on. Please give us some stars, give us a like, give us a comment, all those nice things. They make us very happy, and I love to read your comments. And yes, it helps us get this podcast to more listeners, so we do appreciate it. But let's start with St James's Park, Doyle. Eventful doesn't really begin to cover it. Funny doesn't really begin to cover it, but it was a great end to the game. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but it ended well. I think overall, if Liverpool had taken a point, I think they'd be fuming with it. If they'd have lost, they'd been very fuming. I just don't think Liverpool played particularly well almost all the way throughout the game. What was interesting for me is when they did score the first goal, I put a tweet out just about 2 minutes before that and said, some of Newcastle's players are starting to look a little bit tired. And I think they were never going to be able to keep up that intensity for the full game. And partly due to Newcastle not having any forwards, or certainly not any strikers, as it were, Liverpool were able just to ride out that storm for the first half an hour and then obviously got the goal. We know about the sending off. At the time, it was one of those ones that I thought it was a bit harsh on Anthony Gordon, but then we couldn't see replays initially because things had all gone wrong in the press box. We were at the far end. Very much, we had the view that
you tweeted, didn't you, saying that doesn't look like a sending off, and then Gorsty messaged me saying we've got no replays. Was it a sending off? And I was like, it definitely was a sending off.
it looked like it looked like what it was, which was a forwards challenge, right? So I agree. Eddie Howe said when he first saw it, he didn't think it was any intent, and I know even Van Dijk said that as well. I mean, but you then watched it back, and it was like, yeah, that's a red card. So, and then Liverpool score again straight after half time, and you think, well, let's put it this way: I didn't think that was it, but there would have been some neutral observers who would have thought that. But if you were actually in that stadium, you just knew that if Newcastle had got one, then things would have got interesting. And we saw that partly due to the fact that they were down to 10 men, Newcastle just decided to do for any of our older viewers and listeners, Wimbledon from the 80s. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you've got massive players and you can belt it long and you've got a team that defensively is still trying to work itself out with a couple of new signings, then fair play, just do it. And Liverpool actually, almost all of them, they defended reasonably well. You know, Alisson didn't really have any saves to make, but he caught a fair few. Certainly in the first half, he did well with the crosses and dealing with balls, certainly low crosses as well. But then there was the two soft. They were soft goals, weren't they? I mean, the first one's a bit of a nothing goal, and Kirkes, while he can't grow an extra 2 foot to get above Guimaraes, he could have made a bit more of an effort. And I think that's something that when I first saw Kirkes and Frimpong play against, I think it was Preston back in July, my first thought was they're small. And I think while not every team is going to be like Newcastle, you know, they quite obviously play to their strengths when they have certain players missing. And even when they're not missing, they did that against Liverpool in the League Cup final, didn't they? They put Burn on McAllister or go searching out the smaller player, I should say, and look what they got from that. So there's nothing wrong with that. And then the second one is just ridiculous, really. Goalkeeper puts the ball right down the middle. Kanazi misses the header, and then they tap it in. It's like literally the most basic goal you could ever score. You shouldn't be conceding goals like that. And at that point, you couldn't really argue that Newcastle didn't deserve it, but then you get to the end, and when Liverpool actually finally put a few passes together with, I think every single player touched the ball in that move for the winning goal, and then it obviously ends with Rio Ngumoha, and we saw his finish. To be honest, when he first hit it, I thought he'd missed because it was like so far wide of the goalkeeper. He just stood still, and the way it rolled around, I was like, that gone in, and then obviously when he's running away, like, yep, that has gone in. So, the ghosty was sat next to me, just turned to me as if to like say, what's just happened there? Like, so it was a definite, again, for those who are old enough to remember the name, Wayne Rooney kind of moment, and the only two 16-year-olds to score winners in the Premier League. And while we don't want to heap too much expectation or pressure on the young lad, I mean, we've obviously not had a chance to speak to him yet, but I've seen a few interviews he's done with LFC TV, and he very much comes across as a lad who's gone, I can't believe that just happened. Isn't it great? Everything's great at the moment. So just let him get on with it.
Yeah, he came across as a really nice, grounded kid, which I know, like, we shouldn't be surprised about. But I watched that interview on LFC TV, and it was quite heartwarming, and yeah, it was nice. I mean, I was chatting to a Newcastle fan after the game yesterday, and I was saying it was funny because I think they were so het up about it. It kind of helped them in a way, but then it was also their downfall. The key moments in the game, I think, went Liverpool's way because Newcastle were just far too eager to send it off. I mean, like you say, there was no intent in it, but there was absolutely no need to make that challenge. It was quite silly, and he could have closed Van Dijk down without putting his foot in, and he was just obviously egged on by the way Newcastle had sort of approached the game. I mean, they're probably lucky they didn't get more yellow cards. Certainly Bruno, who I think is a tremendous player, but committed a lot of fouls.
He should have gone, really, shouldn't he? He should have gone at some point.
I mean, he committed so many fouls, didn't he? And I did think it was really bad when I think they committed two pretty bad fouls in the first 5-10 minutes, and then Liverpool committed one and got a book in straight away for Gravenberch, which made Liverpool's task slightly more difficult. But yeah, I think in the key moments, Newcastle were just a little bit too het up and didn't relax. They played a similar style in the cup final, didn't they? And it worked, but it was far more cerebral. It was far more calculated. This time it was like blood and guts. And then once they went down to 10, Liverpool were the one bit of good football Liverpool really did play at the end there. They exposed them, didn't they? So that was good. But how concerned? I mean, I don't want to make it turn it into negative, but the first couple of games we've obviously seen quite a few defensive issues. I was reading, it's not published yet, but I was reading John Aldridge's column, and I thought he sort of hit the nail on the head. It doesn't really feel like the right balance in the team at the moment. Do you have any concerns? It doesn't feel like they started the season in any way like they started last season when they were very solid. They were quite impressive in their patterns of play, and that culminated in that win at Old Trafford. This feels like they've got away with a couple of results, and I'm not sure how long you can do that for.
Well, don't forget, you haven't got Andy Robertson because he's gone with Kirkes. You haven't got Trent because he's gone. And you haven't got Frimpong because he's got injured. And you haven't got Bradley because he's not fully fit. You haven't got Gomez because he's not fully fit. So you had Szoboszlai, by the way, was the best player for Liverpool on Monday. He's playing right back, and then he's got the energy then, but to then play the last couple of minutes in midfield and then ends up doing the very clever dummy for Ngumoha to score. So you've got that. You've also got McAllister and Gravenberch haven't played together on the same pitch since April. So it's basically since Liverpool won the league, they haven't been on the pitch at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you got that, and they were the two main defensive midfielders, and that was the shield for it. And on top of that, you've got two other things. One is you've got Wirtz, who's playing as an attacking midfielder, who isn't Szoboszlai, and over time he'll end up being far more a creative force because that's what they want from him. Slot said, I want him to be like a Trent, but from a much more forward position, he can find the passes. But that means Szoboszlai's not there. Curtis Jones, who kept the ball very well, I thought, on Monday, but he's not defensive-minded player that maybe Gravenberch and to a lesser extent Szoboszlai, certainly Endo is. And then on top of that, you've got Kanate, who's individually just is all over the place at the moment. And Kanate would probably be dropped. Kanate would be dropped had you got the likes of Gomez being fully fit, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with the Italian Adlioni, because he warmed up near us, and he's absolutely massive. He's huge. Right? He's huge, right? So he'll be somebody who I think we'll see him a lot sooner than people think.
Yeah.
But the transfer window hasn't closed, and I know we'll get onto transfers later on. These are things that certainly the centre back situation, we know they're looking to sort, to bring in another one to help. Whether or not that's to help in terms of giving more options, or whether that's to perhaps be a long-term replacement for Canate, whether or not Canate, if Liverpool say, for example, sign Margate from Crystal Palace, and then Real Madrid or PSG come in for an offer for Canate, you'd probably think about it, because you would have 4 centre-backs there. Admittedly, one of them hasn't played for the club, the other one's hardly played the Premier League for the best part of 9 months, but it would give them something to think about. But that's all ifs and buts. You can only deal with what they've got right now. The problem is Canate, for whatever reason, is just nowhere near his level. And you've got Van Dijk, who, despite getting cut in half, thought he was really good as well. And towards the end, he made a couple of really good defensive headers. And you need that when you go to places like Newcastle, and they're going to need it again when they play Arsenal on Sunday. Because if Arsenal saw that game, they are the set piece team. They'll be like, right, we'll get them up here now.
Yeah, they'll just play for corners, won't they? Yeah, I mean, let's talk Florian Wirtz for a minute, because I must admit, like, I didn't see the opening game. I was away, so I can't speak too much to that. I was slightly concerned the other night that the game. I mean, he's got to adjust, hasn't he, to the Premier League style and to the pace. But I was concerned about how much it passed him by and how much he seemed to imbalance Liverpool's midfield. Did you have any concerns at all? I mean, he's obviously got class in pre-season. I mean, watching the AC Milan game, I thought, wow, what a player. But they haven't quite found the right balance for him in the team just yet, have they?
I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, you're not going to play Newcastle every single week, are you? And they're just to go around knocking people over. When he's only just come into the league, and he hasn't had Gravenberch and McAllister behind him, or a good centre-back, or sorry, 2 good informed centre-backs. So, and also you've got the wide men still new as well, that people can feed him the ball in terms of the full-back. So everything's new. So I wouldn't be too concerned. What will be interesting is I think he'll get a lot more space on Sunday against Arsenal. And I think we'll see a lot more about him. And I think he'll know from having played in that game at Newcastle. And to be honest, Bournemouth as well. Last season when I went to Bournemouth and watched them, I was amazed by how physical Bournemouth were. And I think they are a team that's a bit like that. So, there's not going to be, possibly Everton or another one. Other than that, you might say Brentford. But there aren't a lot of teams that are going to play like that. And although having said that, Liverpool play Everton soon and play Burnley. So he's getting a bit of a crash course in a way. But I would expect Wirtz to be a bit more involved against Arsenal. And obviously we have to wait and see what McAllister, whether or not it's a long-term issue. Well, Slot said he doesn't think it will be. If Gravenberch and McAllister can get together and play against Arsenal, and possibly Bradley possibly start at right.
Then what do you do? Because what do you do? Do you move to that box midfield? Because you can't drop Szoboszlai at the moment. He's in such great form, and I just think I've had this feeling since the start of the season, really, which I really like. And we've talked a lot on podcasts. I really like Szoboszlai. I think he is the physical presence that balances Liverpool's team out. I think his work rate is great, and I didn't buy in for all these. I know Jamie Carragher was very keen to see Liverpool buy an improvement on Szoboszlai, and I think Gorsty was. We talked a lot on podcast, didn't we, last year? But I think it's all about the balance of the team, and my worry was always if you swap him out for a more creative presence, then you lose the sort of balance. So what do you do if everyone's fit? Then if you're putting Bradley back at right back, if you're bringing McAllister back in, who do you drop?
Well, maybe you don't, do you? Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe Slot goes, right, I don't have to bring in McAllister straight away because I can put Szoboszlai there. But I've got McAllister on the bench. It's going to be a season where not everybody's going to play every single game.
Yeah.
But the worry is that I would like to see possibly Gravenberch and McAllister and Szoboszlai together in those 2 positions, because then that means that Gravenberch can have a rest, because 2 games that Gravenberch missed this season already. McAllister wasn't really. Well, I think he played one of them, didn't he? I can't remember if he played against Bournemouth. Did he play? Was it Curtis that played there? I can't remember. No, it was Szoboszlai. I mean, it was 10 days ago. I can't. You know what I mean? I think it was Szoboszlai and McAllister actually against Bournemouth. because it was Wirtz and Jones came on and Endo, I think so.
I thought Jones played very well, by the way. Quietly equipped himself, and especially as Liverpool battled in the second half when times got tough. I thought he took a lot of responsibility, and I think he's going to have to this season, isn't he, at times?
Well, that's it. He's not a young player anymore, is he? He's an England international. You know, he'll be in the England squad for the next couple of World Cup qualifiers we've got coming up. So this is somebody who's a seasoned professional. I think he's a different kind of player to Szoboszlai, but I'm pretty sure if Liverpool play in a Champions League final tomorrow, Slot will play Gravenberch, McAllister, and Wirtz. That's just the way that it is at the moment. But that doesn't mean to say it won't change because you don't play a Champions League final in August.
Steve Payne, no pain, no gain. Message said, concerning performance for me last night. 3 great finishes, super start and goal from Rio, somehow 3 points, but self-inflicted defensive issues. Ibu woeful and costing us, not just this game. If I was him, I'd sign a new contract because Real Madrid will not want that. Kerkez collapsing all basics. Also at 2-0, we played at half speed, slow, poor movement, and hardly any shots on goal. Whether this is due to trying to integrate new players or a flawed game plan, either way, it encouraged Newcastle. They had nothing to lose and we struggled to make the extra man count. We must improve. Wirtz has a lot to do in pretty short order if we're serious to sort any sort of challenge this season. Quite dire stuff, but I get where he's coming from.
They've played 2 games and they've won them both, and they've got 2 more points than they had last season. Even if they lose to Arsenal, they still have 1 more point than they had last season from the respective games. So, you know, it's not. I think people are obviously looking at it and going, wow, they've been so used to seeing Liverpool, with the exception of possibly a month at the end of the 23-24 season, for the past 2 years have been on an upward, curve, and they've been getting better and better. And it's obviously led them to win the League Cup, get to another final and win the Premier League. But this is a completely new, different team now, and they don't just happen overnight. It's very, very rare that it does happen, especially when you've taken out key players like Trent, and you're then trying to bring in players where, unusually for Liverpool, there's every chance they could sign 2 players in the last week of the transfer window, which when you consider that they paid money for 6 already, of which nearly all of them have already played. That's unusual for Liverpool. So it's going to take a little bit of time for them all to adjust. And I just think it was a big win in that sense, because you would imagine, from an emotional point of view, there wouldn't have been a worse time to go and play Newcastle. Although from a personnel point of view, with them having no striker, that did help. I mean, let's make no bones about it, I think. But then would Newcastle have been able to play the big long ball all the way through if Isak or one of their newer, if they signed, presumably they'll sign at least one striker, was playing? I'm not entirely sure. So
it's definitely in the handful of hardest aways this season, and looking at it from a very positive point of view, and my glass of Carabao is always half full, is that Liverpool have put into middling or poor performances, but they've got such firepower that they're finding ways to win games, and they would have lost that game in the past, no doubt about it, but they've won it. They're still getting used, as you say, to a lot of new players, and they haven't got everyone fit. So it will be interesting. I think Arsenal Sunday will be a big test for them, and if they can come through that, then that will be really impressive. And also as well, I think it's about momentum, and they've created a bit of momentum now. They're the home team Sunday. If they can win that game, then you've got real momentum, and 2 tough games on paper out the way. So yeah, I think you can be positive about it. I just think there are slight imbalances to the team that I'm interested to see what he does. I'm interested to see how Wirtz becomes a regular, whilst also maintaining the right defensive balance. Because as Aldro was saying in his column, they just don't seem to be protecting their back 4, and it's kind of concerning that long balls seem to be just catching them out.
I'd be more worried if we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's quite obvious, and it's obvious to fix, and that's the thing.
Is one fix, Mark Gay? Do you think that they will go in and buy a defender in the last week? There seems to have been a bit of posturing all window, but do you think that will crystallise into anything?
Crystallise, very good. I think nothing was going to happen until after the second leg of Crystal Palace's European game. I think they want to just get through that, I reckon, and then something, if it's going to happen, will have to happen, because it'll be Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and the deadline's on Monday evening.
Yeah.
I think with Isak, I think we were all convinced nothing was going to happen until after the game on Monday. And now we're in that situation. It'll be about Newcastle, won't it? If they can get 2 players in, they'll go, right, we've got these in. Now we can actually have a proper discussion about this. Because if you've got the owners going up to go and see Isak and whatever they've said to him, he's still gone, no, I don't want to play. Don't want to play for you. For whatever reason that is, which will come out eventually. We've heard talk of broken promises. We'll find out what they are. So I can see that one being done as well. The other question is what Liverpool are going to do in terms of moving players out, because Tsimikas hasn't been in the squad at all this season, and they've already got 2 left backs. So you'd think he might be one to go. Then you've got the Harvey Elliott situation, where Leipzig quite keen on him. I think they're waiting on whether Xavi Simons goes to Chelsea.
Yeah.
But again, Liverpool, are they leaving themselves a little bit short in terms of numbers? Because I'd argue if they get those 2 in and those 2 leave, I'd argue that's just about okay, I reckon, because then it gives room for the likes of Ngumoha and Yoni to kind of be given an opportunity, because we've seen certainly what's happened with Ngumoha is that when he gets that opportunity, he can take it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'd still be, if he would accept it, still be inclined to keep Elliott for a little bit longer.
I'd keep him, but I think for his own sake, he probably needs to go. Yeah,
and I think with lots of these deals, you look at them, they're not like a Wirtz, are they? Where this, that was not a deal that needed to wait for things to happen. That was something that could be sorted at the start of the summer. Lots of these deals, like Gahey, they've got those games. He's got a year left on his contract. In normal circumstances, they'd probably be able to demand what they want, but because of the year, there is a bit of a game of chicken going on. I think you probably see in the last few days of the window, things start to move all across the league, and you often see deals happen, don't you, on deadline day. Wouldn't surprise me if Tsimikas ends up on a loan somewhere. So yeah, I mean, the Isak situation is a funny one, isn't it? I was asking this Newcastle fan, do you think they've been naive? Do you think that they've been unlucky in the transfer market? With Isak, it seems to be a little bit of both, but certainly a bit of naivety in the sense that they've not really read the signs or thought that they'd be able to persuade him. But
the interesting thing for me is that when we were up in Newcastle, we were talking about why does it seem as though players don't necessarily want to join Newcastle. I know it's a bit different with Whistler. I think he's quite keen to come, but they've missed out on Sesko, they missed out on Ekitike, and it seems though they're having trouble bringing players in. And is this linked to the Isak situation? Are players looking at Newcastle and going, well, it's a good club and they're in the Champions League, but do I want to go there if we're going to have this much trouble in case I want to leave? I don't know. I'm not in their minds, but that is obviously going to be a consideration for some players.
I mean, I don't, but there has been talk, so I want to ask you, do you have any concerns about Isak's behaviour, and if he joins Liverpool, is that an issue?
Not really, because if he joins, he'll end up playing, you'd imagine, a lot of games. He'll do really well. They might win some stuff. Then Real Madrid will want to try and sign him, and he'll probably go there. So Liverpool are well versed in this kind of stuff. So yeah. I think there's a bit about there being a bit of a food chain when it comes to transfers. I think we've mentioned this before, haven't we? And at the moment, Newcastle are below Liverpool, and that's just, they don't want to be there. And maybe over time they won't be. In the mid-90s, they were above Liverpool, but things change. And I think maybe the Saudi owners are trying to do a bit of a shortcut, and they possibly might see Isak as a bit of a statement, but it's turning out to be the kind of statement that they don't want rather than one they would have wanted.
Yeah, it feels like it's doing more harm than good, and I think they will relent. Like you say, I think if they get those players, they've made a couple of bids, haven't they, for the Wolves striker Larson, and I think if they get him, and then they get a Whistler or something like that, then I think they will have something prepared to say, oh, we had no choice but to sell, but then they will sell. I think this not for sale at any price will change quite quickly should those players.
That changed the other week, didn't it, with the statement? So that was their first kind of public admission that they would be open to a sale.
Yeah, I saw a really good clip from Jonathan Wilson on his podcast, and he talked about the food chain, and he talked about how the best clubs are the ones that accept their place in the food chain and then lean into it and exploit it. So like you think of your Dortmunds who go, okay, well, our club players will move on, but we will pick players from other clubs, and we'll get the best talent, move them on. And I think Liverpool have done that fairly well. They do try and protect their players, but every now and again, when they have to accept someone's moving on, they do that. They get as much money as they can and they reinvest it. And they obviously did it really well with Coutinho all those years ago. They've done it pretty well with Trent. I mean, I know they wanted to keep him, but they ended up getting a decent fee for him, didn't they? And moved quickly to solve that problem. They didn't. I mean, they did put up a fight, but I think for Newcastle, it's probably just been, yeah, it's that the owners don't want to lose face. They want to make sure that they keep a big asset. But I've just got a feeling that deal might come together in the last few days, because if Isak is still saying, no, I'm definitely not playing for you, and they are making bids for people, then it sort of just feels like it's moving in one direction. Actually, I've got a question that we've kind of just answered in a way, but it leads us on to talk about Ekitike. So Ben Gary asks, now that Nunez's exit is sorted, is the Liverpool striker situation a concern? The club's obviously pursuing Isak, but Newcastle seem incapable of finding a replacement. So at what point do Liverpool have to look elsewhere, and who's even available? All of a sudden, it looks a very precarious position for a season that's nearly here. I mean, that was sent to me before the Bournemouth game. I sort of think the way Ekitike started, I have much less concern about that. Obviously, they'd want more bodies in there, but I think they can be creative and move people around. And he looks a real player, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's certainly. He had a bit of a struggle in the first half at Newcastle because Liverpool decided just to belt a million long balls to him, and he didn't really have much of a chance with some of them. But he warmed to it. It helps that he got the goal earlier the second half. Very good finish. All of his goals have been really good finishes, actually. So I think that he obviously knows where the goal is, and he's somebody who seems to have fitted in straight away into the squad as well. You can kind of see with the way the players have welcomed him. I mean, there was never going to be any concerns over that, because we've heard so many times, and I've seen it for myself, that the Liverpool squad is that kind of place to be. You know, they still have the James Milner rule, don't they? Which I can't repeat on here, but there is that. And that goes. Funny enough, that goes back to what we were talking about Isak, and saying that I think while he's acted in a way that is a bit distasteful, especially if you support Newcastle and you support one of Liverpool's rivals who would rather he didn't join Liverpool, I think we don't know what the full story is. And there must be quite an extreme thing for him to actually do what he's doing. So we'll only know then, but won't be the first player to do, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I think quickly gets forgotten about, doesn't it? We've seen this happen so many times over the years, and if he does come to Liverpool, I mean, either way, if he comes to Liverpool and scores 20 goals, no one will talk about it. If he stays at Newcastle and scores 20 goals, no one will talk about it. The amount of things that Suarez did in his career, and people didn't talk about them after he'd scored a lot of goals, but one of them was this, wasn't it? He gave lots of interviews demanding to leave, and within a year he was absolutely loved and got the move that he wanted, and sort of like sent on his way with celebration for Liverpool fans almost, wasn't he? So I don't necessarily think people will remember it. But Ekitike, I think, his finishing is really impressive. The fact that he's so different to Nunez, isn't he? He doesn't create the chaos that Nunez did. You can tell he's a bit more of a slot player. His positioning is good. His link-up play is good. He did get a bit lost at Newcastle, but then who didn't? It was a very difficult game for him to get into. But the fact that he popped up in the right position and took the one chance he had really well is impressive. And I think my only concern really with signing Isak is how much football does Ekitike then get? And I think he could do with a lot of it, because I think he's going to score a lot of goals. So that will be an interesting balance for Slot. But he definitely seems to be the type of manager who embraces having lots of good players in the same positions and can rotate. Let's finish off with talking about Ngumoha, who we touched upon at the start. But I mean, you watched when he came in from Chelsea last season. You watched youth games. You saw him in action. To me, first of all, the first thing I've noticed this summer, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like he's grown a fair bit.
He looks
like he's filled out. Yeah, but I mean, he just looks special, doesn't he? He looks like he's matured, not just in physicality, but the way he plays as well. The way when to deliver the ball, he doesn't seem to dribble just quite as much. And then that finish was extraordinary. So, yeah, how big of a prospect do you think he is?
Well, we've seen it already, haven't we, in the summer, that he scored a cracking goal against I can't remember who he scored against. Was it the Japanese team? I think it was.
Yeah,
For about
yeah,
a minute, didn't he? Yeah. He scored against Stoke as well. And did he score against Athletic Bilbao? I don't think he did he? Certainly got. No, he did, didn't he? Very early on, first minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Low shot, yeah.
So he knows where the goal is clearly. Obviously, it did help that Newcastle were down to 10 men, but he ended up being the spur man at the far post. But he still had to put it away.
And the finish was.
Well, this is his first time finish with his probably his third or fourth touch of the game. At that point in the match, and you'll have known what it meant, and you saw his celebration, he knew exactly what it meant, and the players knew as well. I thought that was a good touch where even like everybody, if you watch a replay at the bench, Slot starts celebrating with the coaching staff, and every single player just gone. They've all gone. They just legged it down to the corner flag to go and celebrate with him because, again, he's obviously quite a popular lad. They've welcomed him in. And it's not as if he's just started training in the last couple of months with the first team. He'll have been doing it for the past 6, 7, 8, 9 months because he was bought as an academy prospect, but somebody who you could tell from the very first moments watching him is that he was a special talent. Interesting for me is that when he was playing for the under-18s in particular, is that the opposing team would just go and send 3 or 4 players up against him. You just go, right, go and deal with him. And he wouldn't always find a way through. But that's never going to happen for him at the moment if he comes into the senior team because they're not going to go, 16-year-old lad, will be 17 on Friday, comes on. Newcastle aren't going to go wherever they play. Aren't going to go, right, let's go put 2 or 3 players on him and then just leave Salah and Ekitike and Wirtz, whoever else is left. So while it could be difficult in terms of while he has grown, he's still only 16. The physicality and learning how to use that he'll have fewer players to get past. He'll have, and he'll have better players to play with. So, from that point of view, it's going to be good for him. And if he we've done him on the pod a few times already this season, and I think for him just to even come on in that game was quite interesting. I think it's because Liverpool at that time were under pressure. And they took off Gakpo and was it Curtis? I think it was Curtis. They took them off. They're both tall players and they brought on Ngumoha and Elliott, who aren't. And it was kind of a message from Slot, right? Let's just try and win this game rather than just always be sat back defending all these corners.
But he said that, didn't he? Afterwards, he said that he wanted to win the game. And I thought that showed a mentality about Liverpool that wasn't like, let's get out of this with the point that we don't really want, but we're under so much pressure. It was a throw the dice to go and win it, and they did exploit that.
It was a Klopp thing, wasn't it? Klopp used to do that. Although having said that, as soon as he made it 3-2, from speaking to people afterwards, is the television never pointed out that Endo came on. So
I didn't know he came on, so you sent your player in.
Newcastle got a corner, and it's like, hang on, what's he doing over there? But obviously for us, we saw straight the minute the goal goes in. If you watch it again, they're all celebrating, and suddenly there's this shout, and Endo breaks off the celebrate and just legs it as fast as he can down the line to get on. Basically, he takes his top off. So I think by that point Liverpool were just quite keen to see it out, and they still ended up conceding a ridiculous. Did you see that ridiculous free kick that Newcastle got then from the kickoff? Well, I don't know who it was. Was it Guimaraes or Byrne or somebody? Just tried to basically. It was either rugby tackle. It was either Chiesa or Bradley. Can't remember which one it was. And the referee couldn't possibly have seen it, but just saw the end of it and just gave a free kick to Newcastle before they'd even put the ball forward at the kickoff. It was like, it's ridiculous. So they saw that.
I'm not going to criticise referees, but I thought his natural inclination to give a free kick to Newcastle was a lot.
He wanted to let the game go. But what that did mean is that it meant that Newcastle got away with an awful lot of fouls early on, and that kind of set the tone. And to be honest, it would have been hard for any ref, wouldn't it? It was one of those games.
It was one of those games, and the fact that Liverpool got out with 3 points, I think, speaks volumes. The thing about it, by the way, that impressed me about Ngumoha as well is when he came on, he did go and have a run, didn't he? And I don't know whether he won a free kick or a corner, but he took the ball at them. And that
should have won a corner. He should have won a corner. Yeah, I think it went to a goal kick or something like that.
I think that showed the mentality he has, and that showed that the sort of the arrogance or the confidence he has, and I thought that was really impressive. So and I'm kind of glad that Liverpool have decided not to sign a player on the left, because he looks a really, really good prospect and he needs lots of game time. So I'm sure he'll get it. Just going to finish off with one question from one listener. Kenny Alwood has sent me a question, which I think is quite an interesting one. It's not one we've had asked recently anyway. He says, when Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards catch their breath at the end of August, is there a sense around the club that they will be extending Arne's contract beyond 2027? It would seem that there's probably some assurances made of incomings about his long-term future, given their commitment to 5 and 6 year deals. Now, I'd not noticed that, but it's a good point, and I think Liverpool did extend Klopp's contract quite quickly, didn't they, after he'd had a couple of years at the club?
Yeah, you wouldn't be surprised, would you? I mean, I even think that got mentioned or asked around when they won the league, or towards the end of last season, which obviously, not a bad start to his time there. No, it's only 3 years that he signed, so yeah, it could be that he might not want him. He might wait for another club to come in. He might want to take on the challenge of Everton after David Moyes. You never know. So I think it'll be on slot, that one, rather than anything else. But at the moment, you wouldn't see any reason for him not signing a new deal or Liverpool not offering him one. Yeah,
you just think that the club might have that lined up maybe in the autumn. It wouldn't surprise me. Right, Ian, thank you very much. We'll be back. Well, I'm not sure when we'll be back. Maybe Friday to look ahead to that massive game against Arsenal. If not, we'll be back early next week to look back on it. Thank you for listening. Please give us some likes, subscribe, stars, all those nice things, and we will see you soon. So, thanks, Ian.